Okay, welcome back everyone to our City Council meeting. February the 2nd, 2016. We're back from a recess and calling this council meeting back to order to finish the business on the agenda. We are on item number 12 on the agenda, which is bylaws. We have 8 bylaws on the agenda for consideration. And I will ask if any member wishes to hold any of the bylaws for debate, separate vote, or because of conflict of interest. And just have to check in with, okay, with regard to bylaws 1, 2, 3, 5, and 8, council members not in attendance at the relevant public hearing for these items may only vote on the bylaws if they confirm they've reviewed the proceedings which they missed, which includes viewing the related video stream. Bylaw number 8 is related to the public hearing held February 17th, 2015. And Councillor Ball, you were absent from that public hearing. Have you reviewed the proceedings and will you be voting on the bylaw?
It's the only one I haven't had time to do.
Okay. So you, Councillor Ball, will not be voting on that. I was not at the bylaws 1, 2, 3, and 5. I have not reviewed those proceedings and tapes, so I will not be voting on those bylaws. And any other member wish to hold? So we will look to having a motion to adoption of bylaws 1 to 8. Councillor Deal, and a seconder for that. Councillor Jang, any debate? All those in favor? Any opposed? And that carries. So we've approved 8 bylaws and they can be viewed on the city's website. We're on to the 2 administrative motions on the agenda for consideration, which are to be moved by Councillor Jang and seconded by Councillor Meggs. Any discussion on those administrative motions? All those in favor of approval? Any opposed? And that carries unanimously. We have motions on notice. There were 3 motions on notice. Motions B2 and B3 were referred to tomorrow's standing committee meeting starting at 9:30 in the morning to hear from speakers. The other motion on notice is a requests for leaves of absence for Councillors Stevenson, Affleck, Carr, and Louie. Would someone like to move that motion? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? And that carries unanimously as well. So we're on to notice of motion, new business, inquiries, and other matters. Councillor Reimer, first on the queue.
Thanks, Mayor Robertson. I just had a brief question for staff. As council probably knows, I think everybody got the same email and probably heard on the news that the Park Board passed unanimously the long-awaited biodiversity strategy, which is a big chunk of it is Park Board through their autonomous function looking at their management of their lands to improve biodiversity, but also there's significant overlap with the Greenest City strategy and something that those components we've been awaiting for quite some time. So I was wondering if staff could, I'd love to get a briefing on it at council if possible. And I suspect that there are components that it would be helpful for us to pass policy in alignment. Like we've held off on passing biodiversity policy because we didn't want to be directive to the Park Board or potentially in contradiction, but now that they've moved ahead with their piece of it, it seems like a good and opportune time for us to be briefed on it and move forward as well.
Council, I agree with you absolutely. Would like to bring it forward for your consideration, and ideally we would have it endorsed by council as well. As much of the initiatives in the strategy will require more broad city support, so we'll bring it forward as soon as we can. Probably within the next month.
I appreciate that. I think, as noted earlier in council, I was at the invitation of the Canadian government in Austria for a conference on sustainable buildings, and also in Slovakia, meeting with their environment minister to speak about 100% renewable and the opportunities for emerging economies like Slovakia's and potential opportunities for Vancouver-based businesses, because we do have a global reputation around our clean tech and green building industry. Happy to give an update to any member of council who's interested, but I don't want to waste all of your time per earlier comments, so I will. There was some really fascinating stuff. They had a competition, just to give you a little preview if you're interested in more information, had a competition on how to build the lowest cost, lowest energy housing. As you might know, Vienna has one of the largest numbers of social housing per capita on the planet because they have this distinction of being both a city and a state at the same time. So they're able to mobilize the resources of a state behind the kind of day-to-day concerns of a city, which is something quite compelling to see in action. In any event, some really interesting models that they're developing around social housing that overlap well with energy democracy and green city type goals.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Reimer, for that update and representing over in Europe. Councillor Meggs is next.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I have a motion on notice, or notice of motion. I'm never sure which way to put it, but in any case, been circulated to the clerk, and I'd like to put it on table for consideration at the next meeting. It urges council to support action calling on the BC Assessment Authority to clarify their procedures and give more information to members of the public in this council about some of the huge increases in assessments we've been experiencing in Vancouver.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Meggs. So that'll come back at our next council meeting, which is in 3 weeks' time, given the Family Day holiday, bumping our schedule by a week. And we'll see it come back then. So we're on to Councillor Carr.
Yes. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. My inquiry is around the news that you've been, the media that you've been doing on going to Ottawa and this, I think I heard it was 30 or 33 sites or some amount of sites that the city has put forward. The value of them is $250 million according to the Globe and Mail. And my question is that coming through the Vancouver Affordable Housing Agency? I'm not sure of the process where this is coming from, and just a question to the acting city manager around just the process of keeping us informed. Media called me this morning about this. I wasn't privy to the media release if one did go out. So I'd like to know how we want to correct that in terms of the future going forward.
Okay, well, I mean, I can speak to the, generally speaking, we've had the Vancouver Affordable Housing Agency tasked with identifying sites around the city. We had the pilot project, which is known to many as the Land Trust, where we had, there are 4 sites that are now going into construction on city land, maximizing the amount of affordable housing that gets built on those. Those have not had any funding from the provincial or federal government at the inception, although it looks like provincial funding will help support affordability measures there. But we have asked as council, the Affordable Housing Agency and staff to identify land and holdings and opportunities that the city can advance to the province and the federal government for affordable housing, whether that's specific supportive and social housing sites, going back to the 14 sites that we've been through, to a land trust type model where there's a mix of housing, a wider mix of housing. So that work has been ongoing over a number of years now, and this was a package that was pulled together by staff noting the federal government's interest in social infrastructure investment and what was the maximum number of sites that could be assembled in the short term to meet the objectives that the federal government has made public in terms of getting affordable housing built in the near term.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm well aware that in this council we have given direction to Vancouver Affordable Housing Agency to identify sites, but perhaps we can have a briefing or an update at the council level if there are this large number of sites now identified. I think, and whether, you know, I leave it to the discretion of I guess the acting city manager as to how that briefing takes place, but I would appreciate that as an update.
Okay.
Just to reiterate what the mayor said, most of these sites have already been identified as potential sites for affordable housing. By packaging them, we're hoping to leverage a considerable commitment from the federal government. And our hope is that by demonstrating we have sites ready to go now, that there's a match from the local community, we'd be able to really get going more quickly. And we'd absolutely be happy to brief council on the details of those particular sites and the opportunity to leverage, and kind of the hopefully opportunity to leverage also the province. So we'll gladly prepare a briefing for you.
Thank you very much. As you probably saw in the media, there were questions raised around the decision-making of council in this, and I'm assuming our decision-making was in giving direction to VAHA to move forward. So perhaps there could be clarity around that as well.
Absolutely, happy to.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor DeGenova.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have an inquiry that is best directed at staff, and that's regarding the recent media coverage of the downtown Eastside Street Market. I understand, and I'm sure all councillors have been contacted regarding this, but I understand since June 23rd, 2015, there have been some developments with the street market, and most recently, in the media, it's been reported that the street market has said that they have a shortfall of funding and they won't be able to sustain themselves. So I was hoping staff might be able to provide a memo or some comment to council on that, and to see if there was any way that the city could offer, as I think was mentioned in that meeting, I'd reviewed the video, partnerships or how city council could best move ahead with that. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Council, we have a briefing prepared for you imminently, and we'll be able to get into more detail for you.
Thank you.
Okay.
And then, I'm sorry, I have one more inquiry, and that's, pardon, Mr. Mayor, and that's regarding a motion I had put forward last year on affordable home ownership, and I was just wondering if staff could report back as to when they thought that that might be coming back to us.
Yes, Council, we are working away on that, as you're well aware, since we did a workshop on that topic, and so we're intending to bring it forward in the first quarter, as we had indicated. We're just cranking through the outstanding issues.
Great, thank you very much for the update.
And Councillor Ball is next.
Yes, thank you very much. Often we bring the death of one of the acclaimed performers in the city here to council, and rarely do we acknowledge the work done by administrators in the city who have made sure that we could build major civic buildings. And this last weekend, we lost Graham Bartlett. Now, Graham Bartlett was a magnificent gentleman from down under who graduated from the London School of Economics and came to Vancouver after becoming an internationally known arts administrator. And he brought those talents, somebody who could actually fill out every government form invented, fill it out correctly so that every bureaucrat was delighted with it and the money flowed. And because of him, we have the Arts Club, we have this early Stanley, we have Carousel Theatre building on Granville Island, Waterfront Theatre building, and any number of other buildings. There was Graham in the back room working with there wasn't computers at that point, working with adding machines and then onto the computers. And without people who dedicate their lives to making sure that the arts are sustainable and operating correctly, we wouldn't have never have had that many cultural buildings operating here. So I would like to say a special thanks to Graham and the work that he did here in Vancouver. And I know that there are many people who actually were able to get their first check because Graham was getting the money through and getting it as it should be. So thank you, Graham Bartlett, for everything you gave to Vancouver, the artists and the citizens here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ball, for remembering another great Vancouverite here. And Councillor Carr.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I neglected to add one thing also into the time that I have, but I see I have a moment left. And that has been a lot of public concern around the demolition. I know it's generally about many of the older in character homes in this building, but in this city. But in this case, around a home 6088 Adira Street. That is slated for a demolition permit. It's only a 20-year-old home and highly valued, et cetera, but people are quite concerned about it. Recently $350,000 worth of renovations, et cetera. So I just wanted to make sure I've asked and received responses from our acting general manager of planning and development services, Jane Pickering. She has responded to my questions. So just so that for those who are curious, the new home that could be built on that property cannot be any bigger. It is already at its maximum size in terms of building on that lot under that zoning. Secondly, because I have had an inquiry about whether it can be moved, somebody interested in actually purchasing the home or taking it off the site, the answer from Ms. Pickering is yes, it can be moved. And third, a driving force really is the land value. It's less so the value of the home, it's the incredible escalation in land value that I think is obviously of concern to all of us at this council table about how we cope with that and what are the measures to mitigate it. So just so that everybody's aware of that particular circumstance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that update. And Councillor Reimer, do you have more?
Well, just to note, further to Councillor DeGenova's inquiry, we did get a memo from staff on the street market issue, so perhaps, I was just checking my email and it went to all of council, so I can forward it to you, but if there's additional information further to that memo, it might be useful for staff to know what else you would like that wasn't in that memo already.
Okay, Councillor DeGenova.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to thank Councillor Reimer for clarifying, but I would like an update further to that memo. Thank you very much. You don't need to share that with me. I've received it.
Okay, that's it for the speaking queue on new business. And we need a motion to adjourn. Moved and seconded, Stevenson and Jang. All those in favor of adjournment? Any opposed? That carries. So this council meeting is adjourned. And we'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 9:30 for the Standing Committee on City Finance and Services. Have a great day.